Welcome to a special Friday edition of Gen X Transplant Brothers. We are starting today our Freewheel Burnin' Friday podcast. It's going to be a new thing. We're going to shoot to do it every Friday. But as you might know, those have been here. We've been now around for 6 weeks here at the channel. My brother Troy is here. Troy, how you doing?
Doing great today. Wonderful day.
Wonderful day. All right. Good to hear it. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to try to make it quickly through here. I want to throw out there real fast, though. Thank you to everybody that's been part of this community so far. I really like the comments that we're getting because it's showing that you're not just reacting to things we say like, oh, man, maybe, everybody's pitching in, giving their own memory. And I love that. I mean, you can say whatever you want either way, but I love the vast majority. And I don't even know of any that weren't people sharing their story of, something similar, or yeah, I had that, or oh, I had this, or whatever. I've heard Hiwatt mentioned, and we're going to have Hiwatt come back today. We're going to have some Iron Maiden at the end of this presentation today, and you're going to see Dave Murray on stage with a Hiwatt amp in 1980. That's going to be the final part. Right before that, we're going to take another stroll down memory lane. This time, we're going to go to Fender. Once again, we were there the other day because they put out the 50th anniversary. David Murray, that sounds official, and Stephen Harris. Stephen Harris and David Smith. I get them all, but see, I say their first names wrong, messing me up. So anyway, they're going to, we showed their stuff the other day on a couple of videos. And today we're going to talk about the history of Fender as it came around. And I might sound kind of boring. Oh, well, but there's a very interesting spot in the middle. I think you might want to hear that. But we're going to start out today changing gears as we try to really hone in on what it is we want to be talking about here. We're in this lead up to the January official launch of the channel. This has been a sort of feeling around for what topics you want to hear about. Today, we are going to get fancy again, and I'm going to have a PowerPoint presentation. This is kind of what I do. In my professional work, I put programs together for mental health, and I use PowerPoint a lot. And so today, we have the idea. What we're going to do is we're going to try to discuss a little bit about how the mindset of Gen X sort of was developed. And I'm not talking about maybe during our actual childhoods, but sort of how it was sort of put a sort of catalyst that led to the conditions in which we found ourselves. And so to make sure I don't get the wrong buttons here, folks, I'm going to put on my glasses and share this. Here we go. Hopefully this shares now with everybody can see it here to the side. Yes. So Generation X. Here we go over here. Let me get this out of the way so I can see my screen a little better. Okay, so Generation X was built this way. Okay, so what we're going to take a look at is how the education system of the United States sort of came around and why that's important when it comes to Gen X. So first, we have to go all the way back to the 1700s. And so you have to picture back in the 1700s, if you look at this map down here at the bottom, this is Prussia, right? And you see it's surrounded by all kinds of chaos. Germany isn't even a country yet. It won't even be a country for another 100 years. And so this whole area, everybody's constantly jockeying for position and fighting. This is total medieval Europe action going on. And so this guy over in Prussia, his name is Frederick the Great, he decides, the best way to deal with all this new stuff going on, everybody's trying to get all in anybody's face, try to, compete with everybody. We want your land and all this. And everybody's getting a little bit more technologically savvy, that we need to have smarter people. Smarter decisions equal better outcomes, regardless of maybe lesser quality of whatever they might have. So to maybe make up some of the gap they had, he figured, let's just smarter. So he came up with this whole thing about we're going to have this. What do we have here? It says the system introduces bells, schedules, authority at the front. So now we have a teacher teaching in front, establishing structure and discipline and public education. So this is the first instance of a Now, there are other instances you could say, if you go back to like Rome and Sparta and all that, they did have like where they put them into, like particularly with Sparta, they take the young men and put them into these they'd be raised as warriors basically, and there'd be some educational value in that. You also have situations where you have monasteries and things like that, but these are going towards particular aims. One is strictly for war. The other one is, to be in some devotion to God or some calling of faith. And then this one was just to really meet all of those things to some degree, to really support the explosion of just prosperity in the country with better equipped workers via training. And so their model emphasized order and uniformity, mirroring its societal need for a disciplined and organized population. So then after that, so that goes raging on. Of course, we have the revolutionary period in France and in the United States, 1700s. Here comes the 1800s. Of course, then we start to have more problems happening. We have more wars coming in, more technology. We have, Napoleon go through. Then we have the Crimean War, the Mexican-American War, vice versa, flip backwards in time, American Civil War, and then up to this guy here, Horace Mann, who decided in the 1870s, I believe it was, it might be in the 1880s, that we need to really fix it in the United States. We can't these little one-room schoolhouses running around on the prairie all. They're one thing. But what he decided to do is we needed to adopt this Prussian system, as you see here. And so basically, this is where American education becomes standardized. All right. So this is where you have grade levels, you have teachers, you have uniforms, and you have schools that are being built, as you can see in these pictures here. I've got it on 2 screens here, folks. You can see now we have this one actually looks more like the one-room schoolhouse, but you get the idea. They're starting to have more buildings. They're going to get a full-blown building, teacher in the classroom, all of that. So what we've done now is we've taken the wild person and made them more, smarter, disciplined, tell them exactly what to do. And now we're getting a little tighter on that, a little bit more discipline in it. And so now fast forward to the next major person that had something to do with us. So now we've had Frederick the Great, we've had Horace Mann, and now this is just one of several, but this is Nikita Khrushchev, who famously said that he was going to take down the United States without ever firing a shot. Prophetic, if you think about it, depending on how you look at socialism today. But so what he did, he was the one that was around in charge when they put Sputnik up there. And when Sputnik, which is the satellite here, this picture looks like it's a meme. It's not. This is in the National Gallery in Moscow. That is the actual painting. So when I first saw it, I was like, this is a weird meme. And I realized, oh my God, this is real. And so anyway, anyway, that's Sputnik in his hands. And so what Sputnik was a satellite. And when that thing went up into space, that scared the crap out of the big dog on the block, which was us, who was the big dog because we had the atomic bomb. Well, now other people were having that capacity as well. And now somebody could get their stuff higher in the sky. Now, granted, there wasn't a bomb on it yet, but you know how that looks. So that spurred old Ike into action. Beware the military-industrial complex. And what does he do? He creates NASA, DARPA, and the National Defense Education Act, which then takes the presidential challenge, which was something that come up a few years earlier for fitness in schools, and puts more rigid standards on that. So we begin to see what turns into PE. And then that slowly becomes more and more competitive. We'll build on that in a second. But with NASA, of course, now you've got the whole space thing, and now with DARPA, which, but we won't go too far into DARPA, but it's basically in charge of about every weird thing that's ever been worked on from the federal government. And I say weird things like, half the stuff people probably think are conspiracies, but they actually are DARPA programs. But to say DARPA is almost like saying, I don't know, QAnon or Illuminati. And so some people are like, oh my God, DARPA. So maybe even NASA nowadays after 3i Atlas. But so the National Education Act, though, it really buckled down on all this stuff, and it turned school into sort of like a soft boot camp approach, a lot more discipline. And you'll recall, now, you'll see here the pictures, the Sputnik thing. See how the picture here, I don't know if y'all can see it. I'm growing up depending on how large the screen is you're looking at it. This is kids in gas masks that were, preparing in case of gas. And then you have down here in the bottom, you have the National Defense Initiatives that came out. And this is where you see the kids in the corner doing the, what was it called? Duck and cover?
Tuck and roll.
Tuck. Yeah, no, that's a fire. Duck and cover was to get down because of the nuclear devices are coming. And then they militarized the curriculum and right. And then see, we got more of this militarization. And this is where you see a conversation sometimes from some people saying, were we trained to be soldiers? Because you think about it, we had a chow hall, we had a had a nurse on campus. That's like our medical people. We had a command center. We had various platoons, grades. You have companies as grades, and then the classrooms are platoons. I mean, it's very military structure. And then outside, we have literal obstacle courses. I mean, and so yeah, you could say that, but maybe not. I mean, did somebody really in the back room one day say, "I know, let's do it exactly like that"? Probably not, but I'm sure that was in mind, or if not, it made sense, and it, in effect, worked. I mean, it created a bunch of young kids that were able to navigate those obstacle courses, like being able to be out on these swing sets. Remember going so high in the chain, trying to go over the top. And every once in a while, some freak of nature would do that, or end up going in and it'd get slack and they'd drop face first in the dirt. All kinds of weird stuff happened out there at the playground. Excuse me. So it toughened the kids up a lot. And so that built in resilience. And so at the end of the day, so now you have the kids. Now let's flash forward all the way to us, because these pictures still look like the 50s. And I never did the duck and cover, I don't think. I remember hearing about it. I remember maybe seeing stuff on the walls. This would have been early 70s, like out at primary, what's the name of that school? The primary, what was the name of the primary school we went to out there?
Pioneer School.
That's why I want to say primary, right? Pioneer School. Yeah, that was great. So anyway, we didn't have. I don't remember actually doing that. We did tornadoes.
You also had like the Boy Scouts of America started growing like the 1950s, where it trained boys to survive.
Exactly, Troy. Thanks for pointing that out. And we were in that. You went to like Eagle Scouts and all that, didn't you?
I didn't make it that far, but yeah, I went all the way through junior and high school. But a lot of those guys were Eagle Scouts.
Yeah, I remember, because it was really big in that Arizona community. It was really huge. Back in Chicago, it wasn't as big. We had Cub Scouts whenever there's enough Cub Scouts to meet. That was a short-lived thing. But yeah, that exactly. Girl Scouts and even bake sales. I mean, look at that. That is capitalism being grown organically. Kids figure out a way to go sell these outside. Yeah, so we were really given a lot of freedom, despite this regimented daytime schooling and the strictness of it in that sense. It was completely different. Now, and for those of us that were fortunate enough to be in schools where they could still paddle you, that was a reality too. It was not unheard of to have the gym coach throw you against the wall.
Well, at Neoga Elementary School, I had Mrs. Queen. She was the principal, and everybody talked about the paddle machine. It was a machine that she used, and kids were terrified of her. Of course, it was all kids making stuff up.
We had a teacher. There was a sixth grade. I remember when I was going from fifth grade to sixth grade, there was a teacher. I'm not going to say her name, began with a K, in case she's still alive. Two things. One was a rumor. The other one was real. The rumor was that she had a paddle that had drilled holes in it so it had less resistance, so it could hit you harder.
Yeah. Yeah,
and then we actually got a note. She gave us a note to take home to get signed by our parents, giving her permission that if we acted out in class, she could dig her nails into us.
Parents like, sure thing.
I never saw that enforced, but yeah, I mean, that works. Yeah, nobody's going to piss her off. So anyway, there it is. We had structured daily schedule, Gen X childhood. Let's see, featured strict schedules. Children moved by bell cue. This screen's easier for me to read. By bell cues and followed clear rules throughout the day. Discipline through physical activity, gym class, fitness class. Here we go back to this again. Promoted discipline, challenging exercises, fostering a physical and mental toughness. Orderly cafeteria experience.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, okay.
Look at that.
School cafeterias resembled military chow halls. Yes, in the regard that you went down the line. Emphasizing order, routine, and group discipline during meals. Good luck with that. But yes, it was definitely attempted. And there were certain schools, I went to lots of them, but there were some schools that had that. So,
do you remember
and that's
when
exactly
they'd
how
have sauerkraut? Sometimes they'd have sauerkraut, and That's no kids ate the sauerkraut, so you drink your milk and stuff the sauerkraut into your empty milk carton because the teachers wanted you to eat properly. So you dispose of the sauerkraut. It's like once a week they had sauerkraut for one day, and then they had fish on Fridays. It was almost
Right.
routine to have, and the whole school smelled like sauerkraut, so you knew it was coming.
Do you remember putting when you didn't want to eat it, putting it in the empty milk carton?
Yeah, that's where all the sauerkraut went.
Right, exactly, right. I thought you just said it right. Yeah, it was like I mean, it was like school was a machine, and we're like sort of the moving parts through it. Here you go, all throughout the day, do this, do that. But then as soon as that bell, boom, out the door. And that's where I think we get to this part. All right. Then we went from that to this. And I don't know, maybe not everybody. Okay. We have had some people point out, hey, man, somebody pointed out, I didn't have this experience at all. I grew up in hip hop. Fine. Exactly. I bet there's a person out there that say, I'd never listened to anything but Roy Rogers and George Strait. Great. George Strait, by the way, one of my 3 top bands, Grateful Dead, Iron
Oh,
Maiden, George
yeah.
Strait. But, yep, it's been that way since the 90s. Yeah, so maybe you weren't. We just happen to be all these things to a stupid degree. I mean, we also did a lot of the degenerate type stuff, and I mean, we took it to the max in all these areas. So afternoon independence, Jen, are you laughing?
Yes. Degenerate.
Stop. We're not supposed to glorify the past. That's it. YouTube's gonna get us banned. We're so ashamed. Okay, no, now some of this absolutely right. I mean, when we talk about things that we did, particularly when it comes to using substances, absolutely, but not glorifying that. It might be a funny story. These things, different. I mean, but again, we're not breaking any rules here. Gen X kids returned home alone after school, learning self-reliance and responsibility at a young age. Obviously, that was, I mean, you had no choice. You got home, you were home by yourself. Nobody's getting home for several hours. And unless you had a sibling, you're literally by yourself. So the front door key, the shoelace, I don't know which I did. I remember I used to think I had one around my neck, like this picture here, to literally get in the house. But then the other thing was, no, let me rephrase that. The one around my neck was from my locker at school, I think. That's what that was, because the one for the house was literally under the mat.
Yeah. Under the mat
Literally was
or under a
literally
rock
like
near
the
the
front
mat.
door mat.
Yeah.
It's practically in the keyhole.
Right. Welcome to my home. The key's under the mat.
Right, and those were the days too, where we didn't lock the doors at night. To this, I'm not going to talk too much more about this. I don't want people to know where we live in Chicago, but to this day, that still freaking happens. It's like, come on, man, it's been a long time since the 70s and 80s. But at any rate, right, and the freedom and safety balance, this is an interesting one because safety for us was always sort of not considered other than the obvious. Like, we're not just going to jump off a bridge. But if it were walk down the bridge's railing, now that might happen, and so that was a kind of weird balance. And look at this picture here. It just sums it up. See this person, they're on like it's not a ski lift, but it's equivalent type of thing. Yeah, I guess it is a ski lift during the summertime, but there's not even a little cage on them. Doesn't even appear to be seatbelts. I don't know if you can see that. I know you're looking at your phone, but yeah, it's a picture of like a parent and a kid coming up a ski lift. But that type of stuff was common. So this is back to the resilience. Okay, so the independent problem solving. We always had to figure out stuff. What are you going to have? You want a snack? Figure it out. You get a flat tire? Figure it out. There wasn't any run to the store, run to dad, get $10 and run to the store and get a patch. That didn't happen. You might have had to tear all the cushions in the house until you get enough coins from the couches and then go get the patch.
Yeah.
But so you had to make it happen yourself. Limited trust in institutions. Absolutely, man. I don't want this to sound anti-police, but I remember even as kids, it was like, you never wanted to see a police car. Well, the last thing you want to see is a police car. Because maybe it's inherently we were always up to some form of maybe no good. Who knows? But it wasn't truly no good. I mean, what would we have been doing right around Neoga, Illinois, 10 years old on bikes? I mean, I don't know, but I remember whenever you see a cop car, it was like immediately like, oof.
Yeah,
And then, of
run.
course, and then we were still, our parents were still in this sort of never trust anybody over 30 years old, although they were all probably getting in that vicinity. But so for those of us born early enough in the Gen X experience, when I was 5 years old, it was still 1970. So these sort of the true hippie 60s mindset may have been there. I'm not saying I experienced that per se, but I mean, overall, the whole government being something you could depend on, or any kind of really needing anybody else for anything, whether it's an institution or not. That's a strange one. And then and so that's why, so this roots and past experiences, I tossed this one in here just because in this sense, I'm talking about how when we see ourselves being successful in the past, we were able to get confidence and be successful moving forward. This is stuff that I talk about a lot in my counseling and coaching. And that's how I build confidence, for people to have confidence issues. If you see yourself being successful, kind of hard to lie about that. And it's a great way to see it, to build upon it. And I think that we were doing that constantly as kids. Now you could say, okay, well, that's 101 habit formation, right? Because I mean, look, from the first time somebody walked out of a cave, blueberry tastes good, rock doesn't taste good. I like blueberry. I just developed a little boom. I just burned a little neural pathway there. That was a favorable experience. I got my dopamine, and I will now eat blueberries. The rock, not so much. It gave me the opposite sensations, and so, but that's learning. And so basically, and so we had to do that so much on our own. And so those all three sort of go together. That problem solving that we had to do, we didn't have to look to anybody else to do it for us. And we always knew we could do it because we've done it in the past, because it's the way it had been. And it's weird talking about it like this. We never thought about it like that. Of course, then why would we? Now, here's the problem. Let's flash forward now from 1975 to 1980 or whatever we're currently in with our childhoods. And for you younger Gen X people, maybe this is still probably more or less the same up until around 90. And so your first 10 years were not that different. I mean, there wasn't night and absolute day between 75 and 85. A whole lot of difference between, say, 85 and 95 because of safety culture. And then, of course, you go another 10 years. Now you're in a zoo, you have Patriot Act and everything else going on. But so now let's get all the way to where we are now. And so back to this other question that we were talking about just prior to coming on today. Troy and I recorded a thing about why men want to move to Colombia, why American men are moving to Colombia. This is part of that reason. And so the traditional Gen X values, we grew up emphasizing self-reliance. We had around us in those days all kinds of affordable housing, straightforward career paths, and core values. And by this, what I'm getting at is that, remember, there was always a job you could have. It was okay to get a job at a hardware store. You could work your way up, maybe become a manager at a hardware store and still do well. You could go down and get a job at wherever. Like, for instance, my grandmother Patterson, she worked at the GE factory in Mattoon, Illinois, and put filaments in light bulbs. And that was one. And then another time she worked at a bra factory. And so, I mean, all those places might not have sounded glamorous, but they paid well. They came with pension plans. They came with healthcare coverage. And so then the housing was, obviously everybody in those days, it was different in general. But that's the sort of thing that then their kids, our parents had that, but that all started evaporating by the time most of us hit 20. Like by 85, you're already starting to see 401ks taking over. You're starting to see none of this. Unless you're in some kind of government or major industry, you're not going to probably have a retirement plan like in the old days, like a pension plan, so to speak. There are exceptions, and I'm not an expert on this, but I just know that basically nobody I know, except for my brother, Troy, who is retired from the railroad. In fact, I don't even know if anybody that even has anything like that, other than one that they might have theirself with a 401k. So that all went away. And so we had to shell that out too, right? And so, there's all ways you could, I'm not trying to I can't really slice the finances on all that up, but it's totally freaking different in that regard. On top of that, we have the whole local community thing. We completely destroyed that. We first wiped it out with Walmart, and then Amazon slowly killed that off. And now who knows what's going to do in Amazon eventually, or does it even matter at this point? There's no stores. So where's anybody going to get a job to begin with? And let alone if you did get a job like that, somehow it's stigmatizing now. It's like not glamorous to work in certain kind of industries where it used to be just fine to own a gas station. I own a gas station and I have a great family and house and kids. That was perfectly viable, even in the 70s and maybe even into the 80s, but certainly not by the time any of us got to a point where it counted. And yeah, I know there's plenty of you out there that say, yeah, I got one of those jobs, and great. That's awesome. You also might have did 20 years in the military. Again, awesome. That's a government job, right? And I already mentioned that. So I'm not saying that everybody is in this boat, but a lot of people are. All right. And it's a huge number of people in the United States, particularly in the Gen X community. And so what that sort of did is you can see this hands off of problem solving. What we've sort of done is we went from this world where we were given a lot of information on how to do things and then told just to go do it, and had all the options in the world and able to get all the resources that we needed. Like we'd make it ourselves. We'd build tree forts. We'd do whatever, right? Then times changed. And yes, every generation has these things come up. We didn't have World War II. Yeah, we had GWAT, but that's kind of different. That's more millennials mostly. And still, it's not the same kind of overall drag that, say, World War II or Civil War or World War I or, past things like that, generations, Great Depression, things like that. But at the same time, ours changed in a different way. It's like the country was just removed. It was like the entire framework on so now it's like, okay, we have all this creativity, but nothing to create. And now all the jobs are like online, or AI's eating them, or, it's just, so this has really put Gen X in a quandary, I think, for a lot of men that leads to this isolation and everything that we feel today. This lack of purpose, you could say, because it's hard to have this MO of being these self-starters, always creating, always doing, when it's like there's nothing to do almost. And I don't mean that like we're boring people or we can't figure out what to do. It's just, let's be honest about it. There's not a lot of, unless you get golden and go viral or something like that, there's not a lot of things you can just come up with these days to take off. And also to be confident that in 5 years, you're not going to have to get another certification or something like that. See, here we go. Credential emphasis. This is the modern landscape. Digital transformation, the credentialing craziness going on. All kinds of layers of, and then on top of that, all the insurances you have to get for all the various levels. The operating expenses to even do anything is ridiculous. And how long are you going to be current? How long before the boomer finally retires before the millennial gets your job? Not complaining. That's reality, folks. Google it. It's happening all over the place. They're writing about this, and like people that write about this, financial people, whatever, job people. And this human-centered approach, yeah, for now, right? The reason I'm getting out of counseling is because I'm fully aware that within a few years, counselors are probably going to be very, very scarce, because I've already, I do a lot of stuff in AI and all this too, but some of the work I do with healthcare. I've already seen demonstrated AI applications that can do better drug and alcohol evaluations than a counselor. And now that's not the counseling. That's just by the numbers type of stuff. This is basically still numbers to some degree. And that's a broad, as opposed to counseling or even coaching, which does require more of a human thing. But at the end of the day, if ChatGPT can counsel them, not now, I'm not saying that's the case now, but say a few generations from now, people like me are going to be out of a job. And so, or at least the majority of me, unless you already have hit it, unless your name's Brene Brown or something like that, bye. It's like, so this is the kind of situation we found ourselves in. And there's no movement up, again, because in my particular field, those roles are still filled by people that are literally in their 80s and 70s. Some in their 80s. And I'm there's not very many in my age group in this, and there's a C below me. So it's like, why am I even in this business anymore? And so the human-centered approach is human-centered for now, but it's going to rapidly be more data driven. So, and I don't mean that to freak people out. That's just the truth of the matter is. I mean, if it can be done by a number, it can be done by a machine better. So,
Yeah, that's
sorry,
scary.
try I'm blazing through this.
No, keep going.
This is getting to the passports. So now we feel like we're out of place, sort of like out of time. All the rules have changed, but it's not a personal failure. And we're not blaming the world. I think what it best could be suited as is operation. Think of it like operational systems on a PC. This is like putting a PC operational system on a Mac. We were optimized to be a certain kind of people for a certain kind of world that they thought was coming. That didn't happen. And then in the absence of that, the world got extremely soft, extremely complacent, no more enemy in the world. And it caused all kinds of weird things to take place. And I'm not going to even try to connect the dots beyond that, but something happened because the amount of just upheaval across such a short period of time that is impacting literally basically one segment of the basically 45 to 60 people that are sort of caught in this bind of not being able to get up because the people are still above them. Meanwhile, having a sea of people below them that are educated just last week or just last year or within the last 10 years, not in the 90s or in the 80s when they got their degree. So again, this sounds like I'm whining, and a little bit might be, but I'm whining for all of us Gen X. So I'm not going to read all this. But I'll put this PDF up on. I'll attach it if I can. If not, you can go to my website. It's linked above. I'll put it on there, just so everybody can see it. But I'm going to so next we have the changing social structures. We're going to start foreshadowing next week's conversation on this. We didn't mean to go this long on this topic, but we did. Gen X experienced evolving support systems, changing expectations. Now we have marriage issues, we have identity stuff, we have gender stuff, roles in society. Again, we're going to talk about this next week. I got a big surprise coming on that. Economic shifts, reduce the rewards for Gen X traditional strengths. That was a strength, our sort of financial independence thing, and that's leading to feelings of responsibility and powerlessness. I worded this pretty poorly. I can see I did this. I originally was just going to try to say all this, but I figured this would be easier. So adaptive responses. Many Gen Xers adapt by pursuing expat lifestyles. That's what Troy and I just recorded prior to this. That's going to be coming up on the channel here in a couple of days. Opting out of dating. You've heard about all this. There's a lot of that stuff. The red pill, the midtown folks, and just other guys that aren't, that say partisan in the whole thing. And redefining fulfillment in general. I just watched a special on Joe Rogan, and he was talking about the latest advances in AI sex bots.
Boy.
So there you go. Every generation has a crisis. See, we have all this stuff. Stable marriages became fragile marriages. Affordable housing became, I'm going to just read these here, folks. Affordable housing became structured affordability. Job security became gig work and layoff. Pensions disappeared. Local community and networks collapsed. Church and civic involvement vanished for many. Respect for masculinity became suspicion of masculinity. Applying for a job now means navigating HR filters instead of shaking someone's hand.
Oh, yeah.
Housing inflation outpaces wages by orders of magnitude. Healthcare costs became a second mortgage. Retirement plans shifted from guaranteed pensions to self-managed exposure to volatile markets. Masculine-coded labor, building, repairing, driving, physical work lost cultural prestige even though society still depends on it. Some men are checking out. Others are reinventing expat life, not marrying, not dating, leaving corporate America, starting small side hustles instead of chasing careers, building microeconomies instead of large institutions. Identity shifts hit Generation X differently. The rules around marriage and divorce changed, and men reacted rationally. That was a quote I saw. What changed between 30 and 50 for Gen X men? And what made it so hard? That's a question to you if you're listening to this. What has changed for you if you're a Gen Xer? If you're not, I mean, I say it like we're the only ones, but there's plenty of people on 5 years of either side of us that are probably similar, and all of us are Americans, and even women. I'm not only trying to talk about men, but obviously we're two guys. and it appears that mostly men have been replying. And so, I don't know, Troy, what do you think? Do you have any thoughts of this? I'm going to get rid of this screen here so I can see you again.
I think
Any thoughts on all this?
I think the whole marriage and not dating thing is huge amongst men in the Gen X generation. I know, I mean, a lot of men that are fed up with it and won't do it. Again, not complaining, but well, I am complaining. Feminism kind of took over, and men want a woman, not, well, you know, they want a woman, not a woman that's going to act like a damn man. So I think a lot of guys out there can relate to that red pill thing. I know I could, and I'm divorced, and that really helped me through the divorce, but you can go overboard on that single crap too. But I feel like a lot of men have been just ran through the ringer on this one issue itself. And also the job market, like
Well,
you were
that's
saying earlier,
exactly.
just
Go
it
ahead.
isn't there anymore. No
Right.
jobs.
I was
That's
going to ask
about
the
it.
example. We'll talk about Radio Shack. When we talk about Radio Shack, tell us about the
Radio
job
Shack.
application. Not right now. You were just telling me about this job application thing at Radio Shack. This didn't happen, folks, but it was interesting what did happen. Okay, real fast. We're going to close this topic out. I did not intend to go this long, but we're going to still do quick 2 other little segments here. But I just want to say we're going to continue this topic next Friday at 1:00. We're going to have a guest on for that episode. Her name is Juliana Tabarez, and she is actually a Spanish speaking. She's from Colombia, Spanish speaking author, and she's already written 1 book. She's coming out with a new book that's currently on pre-sale on Amazon. In I believe it's March. It's called The Feminine Code, and it is not what you might think when you first hear that. It's not some new age like, oh man, codes from the on high, or whatever, or some secret code. It's basically sort of like a code of like a sort of operating system, you could say, how to be feminine, basically. And she's actually going to be, I think, kind of refreshing to men, because she takes a very hard line against feminism, and without intending it, her number 1 fan group on her YouTube site, as far as that agree with her, and I'm not talking about weird fan stuff, but love her comments, are men, which is odd, you might think, because she writes for women. But if you look at her comments, it's guys saying things like, I've never heard a woman speak this way. This is the best thing I've ever. Thank God I'm giving this book to my wife. And so I was talking to Troy about doing this, and this topic came up about, okay, what about the man and woman relationship? Because that's it's freaking huge right now in the United States. Everything from family to everything. I mean, there's so much of this is wrapped up in that. And then at the end of the day, the loneliness and the expat thing. Well, all that goes. And so we decided to bust it in 2 parts. So we're going to have Juliana. I talked to her last night about this, and she's agreed to come on. So we're going to come on. She does speak English. Colombian accent, obviously, but you'll be able to muddle through. And she speaks just fine, don't worry. And so she's going to, if anybody wants to be on for that, we'll be able to answer questions. And then also, Troy, we'd like to hit you to share your experience you had. I'm going to blow it up too much. But anyway, check back for that next Friday at 1 for the next Freewheel Burning podcast. Without further ado, I promise you that we're going to take another walk down memory lane real fast. Let me make sure everything is. I have a picture of Buddy Holly up here. We're going to see in a second. I just saw it. It popped up and I'm like, no, I almost left the session. Eek. Screen share, not end session. Okay. So it all starts. So way back in olden times, there was this guitar company named Fender. Whoops. Give me a second here, folks. I got to get back to the top. So we're going to take a look at Fender. Now, what this doesn't tell you is the beginning of the story. Leo Fender had nothing to do with guitars or really musical equipment in general. He just happened to be a guy that knew how to fix stuff, and he knew how to fix electronic things. And when in the town he lived in, when the local bands or whatever started playing in the 40s, I guess it would have been early 50s. They'll probably show me the date here. Yeah, 40s. What was going on was that the drums and the horns were drowning out the acoustic guitars because, well, you couldn't hear an acoustic guitar, even mic'd, I guess, over all this racket. So he decided I need to build me an electric guitar. And so that's what he did. And so in 1946, he decided he's going to start building guitars, and he did. And there he is in his little shop. And it was the Fender musical instrument, established in 1946. His first collections are guitar amplifiers, a bit later, lap steel guitars, pedal steel. In addition, affectionately known by historian as woodies for their uncovered wood cabinetry. The Princeton Deluxe and professional amplifiers were introduced. Okay, the woodies were those amps, the Princeton Deluxe and the amps, so 2 amps, and these guitars came out at first. And so what he was doing, he had to come up with both. He couldn't just make the guitar; he had to also make the amp. So he made a guitar and an amp, and so they both became the Fender amp. And so he made at first the Telecaster guitar and the P bass, the famous, the one that Steve Harris plays, the Fender Precision bass. And so there you go. In 1951, out rolls the first, and the Bassman amp was introduced. I don't know. I guess he played the Tascam. I did the Tascam, the Telecaster through there. So one fell swoop, Fender revolutionizes a solid body electric guitar and bass. The radical look, feel, sound, and unorthodox manufacturing techniques will change the course of musical instrument industry and popular music in the process. And then, just 3 years later, here comes the beast. 1954, the Stratocaster. Just look at this puppy. That thing looks, I don't know if you can see all the detail, Troy. I know you're on your phone, but that makes it look a lot more technical than it actually look. I don't know.
Yeah,
But anyway,
there's all that
boasting a
stuff.
comfort contoured, yeah, it does, especially around the bridge or around the tremolo area. And that might have been the original way it was locked down, actually, for all I know. I have to look at a picture of one. Boasting a comfort contoured body, advanced electronics, and built-in pitch-shifting vibrato system, the Strat will become the world's most recognizable electric guitar. Take that. I know Troy's a Les Paul guy, so we always do this.
I am.
Its versatile sound will make the choice popular music's most renowned players. There's one sitting right over there. Okay, so 1954, this is when rock and roll starts. But oddly, there's no Fender involved in this. So when Bill Haley in the comments released "Rockin' Around the Clock," we're gonna rock around the clock tonight, right?
Yeah.
There's no Fender in that entire production, but it made rock and roll popular. And then, just a few years after that, I'm going to share this real fast. In 1957, I'm not sharing anymore, right? No. In 1957, this is the Buddy Holly picture. I just want to show you how cool this thing looks. This happened. And so when Buddy Holly went on the Ed Sullivan Show to sing Peggy Sue in 1957, was the first time the world got to see that Stratocaster. There it is, a typical, like, the old tobacco. In fact, same exact model or colors one I do have right here. And so there it is. That's like the first time everybody got to see a Stratocaster. And of course, timeless song and, one of the all-time icons of music, and Buddy Holly. But so back to the presentation. That was Buddy Holly in 1957 when he went on to performing the most watched program on television. Lubbock, Texas' favorite song, Buddy Holly and the Crates take the stage with their frontman Holly playing a Sunburst Fender Stratocaster to play hits Peggy Sue and That'll Be the Day. Man, dads to be singing those songs today still.
I can hear him now.
All right, then next in 58, we had the Jazz Master. I can hear him now. 1958 was the Jazz Master. We won't read each one of these. So then the Jazz Bass came out in 62. One big fat pickup. Did this one have the staggered ones at the beginning? No, big fat pick. Oh, that was that big Steelman. I remember seeing those kind. That's probably the steel kind too. What is this? Now we start talking. So now the Fender Strat's going to get a little bit of a kick. This is 63. So this is, we're almost to the Fender Twins. So this is the guitars or the amps. That must be a schematic of the first one. Already the gold standard for electric guitar and bass amplification, newly revamped tube-driven models like the Twin Reverb and Deluxe Reverb, Princeton Reverb, Super Reverb, Vibrolux. I've never seen that one. Continue to be the go-to amp voice for rock, country, jazz, and blues musicians. Built-in effects, a variety of power output capabilities, sparkling stage cosmetics establish a new Fender benchmark. So there you had it. Now you have a Strat and a Fender Twin, or whichever one you might want. Then Bob Dylan, he comes along. Remember, everybody got all mad at him because he went electric. Well, he went electric on a Stratocaster. And then the big bomb came. Now the guy says, we can make your guitar also sound like, I don't even know what, how would you best describe that? It's like a Stratocaster sounds on 11. Okay. He's the ultimate Spinal Tap. This is what it sounds like with as much fuzz. So the pinnacle of the 60s hippie generation. This is Star Spangled Banner, again, played on a Strat. And punk rock came along, the Ramones, Talking Heads, Elvis Costello, Sex Pistols, all of them, Fender instruments, and then also, here we got some disco folks, Chick Niles Rogers, okay. MTV, boom. Of course, we're not going to go through here, but of course, Pat Benatar, of course, almost any video you can think of in this era is going to have a Strat or a Les Paul in it. Now, okay, so something that wasn't mentioned in here, somewhere around here, Fender was bought by CBS, and the quality of the guitars took a nosedive, and the amps and everything. Something happened. I don't remember this. I just read about it, and because we missed it. Because what happened was it was all during this era, which would have been our era, that was going on, and it wasn't until after 1985, which was after the time that we were actively playing in the heavy metal days. Then I think it was like 86, a group of Fender employees purchased it back from CBS, reopened it, retooled, went back to the old designs, and brought Fender back to its glory. So that's what this is. 87 is when the Fender Custom Shop opens. Does this say anything about that? No, it doesn't talk about that. But somewhere in here was that CBS era, and so this is when they must have rebought it back out. And then in 88 we start getting custom ones from various people. Nirvana, okay, Nirvana must have had one. Bonnie Raitt. There's just more musicians. Hot Rods using, I guess these are littler amps, probably. I don't even know what a hot rod is.
I've never heard of it.
Number one, because backline amp around the goat. I don't know. Maybe I should know what it is. I just haven't been to, well, I haven't been to a Guitar Center since 2001. Okay. Cyber Twin. I have a friend here in Columbia that has one of those.
Are they pretty
I
good?
don't like it.
You know?
It doesn't have the tube sound.
No.
I'm a stickler for the tubes. I have to have tubes.
Yep.
I have to have tubes. Without tubes, go away. I prefer to hear the analog tape too over the CD.
Yeah.
So, okay, 2017, Fender Play launches, giving aspiring guitarists all easily accessible and completely to learn guitar. I have actually seen that. There it is. There's a picture of it down here at the bottom. I've seen that. You can actually go through it and teach you how to play guitar. So yeah, there you go, folks. There's a brief history of Fender guitars, and all of this just by virtue of me going there. I forget why I went there. And then they started sending me, they sent me the Iron Maiden email. I was like, now they know what we're into. And then maybe they knew we talked about it, because now they're sending me stuff that I'm literally talking about 2 days later on this podcast. So that was that. Now, for the last thing here, this is a crapshoot, folks. This is either going to sound okay or it's going to fail miserably. I don't really see it going well. We are going to attempt a couple of things. One, not to get the video. We had 2 videos so far that had to be redone because one had like 3 seconds of Rat playing on a TV commercial, and the other one had Iron Maiden playing at the Avalon Ballroom, and it flagged me for them. It was just literally about 10 seconds of that. So today, to get around that, I decided I was going to go to archive.org and find live bootlegs of Iron Maiden. Right? Because that's not
how this goes.
Well, no, it actually is, because it actually is, because it belongs to the band. And then is it simulcast by a radio station? Well, then the radio station owns it. And I couldn't figure this out. And so what I did is I went to the Iron Maiden website, and I should have that up here right now. And I found this particular show. And not only was this show a weird show, but they didn't even play under their name. It was the very last show of 1980. And it was on, December, What's it say here? It just okay. So it's live at the Ruskin Arms. That's all it says. And they played as Genghis Khan. You know, because they have a song Genghis Khan.
Right, yeah.
And
I
so
didn't
this is
know
in
that.
1980. Excuse me. I'm going to try to share this. Now, I don't know if you're going to be able to hear it, or if you're going to be able to hear me, or if you're going to be able to hear Troy, or if you're going to be able to hear all of us. We're going to find out. Okay? It says it's going to be able to share the audio, but we don't always believe what it says, do we?
No, we don't.
All right, here we go. This is song number 2. We'll listen to a little bit of this. I don't know if we'll listen to the whole thing, but Troy, I wanted to tell you back. By the way, Troy, I don't know if I mentioned to you, but that show that you saw in on the 4th of June of 1981 was the second. No, excuse me.
Yeah, second.
Did you see 81 or 80? The Killers tour.
81.
No, what year? 80 or 80?
81.
81. That was Iron Maiden's second U.S. performance. The first performance was the day before in Las Vegas. You saw him in Phoenix.
Yep.
So that's that show. This is just a few months before that. So I'm going to switch over to this. Here the boys are. There they are. Look at the stage. Notice, okay, in a minute, as they show this, you're going to see Dave over here. You're going to notice he's playing a high watt amp. I never knew that. I don't know why I would know that, but okay, here we go. Hopefully the sound comes through.
Wow. Yeah.
I love his rah, rah.
Yeah, I couldn't hear it, but he sure does look like he knows what he's doing.
That's good. Can you hear me, Troy?
I can hear you. I can't hear Iron Maiden now. Nice stage lights. Oh, that's Dennis Stratton. That's pre-Adrian Smith.
I don't know how well the sound's coming through. We'll stop it there in case it was a disaster. We'll listen to it on the playback. If it works, what I'd like to do is, Troy, I found a couple others of these. I would like to, by the way, so I found it on Archive, and then I did some research on who this person was, and I found they actually have a YouTube channel, and that's the same people, and it's their YouTube channel. So I'll put a thing down below in the description of this when it's done to a link to that guy to give him credit for that. And also, I mean, I don't know how he got it, but I'm just showing what he had. So YouTube, it was him, not me. Troy, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. Could you hear me talking while we were listening?
Yes, I could. I couldn't hear Iron Maiden, though.
Yeah.
And that was, I said, it was
At all.
Dennis Stratton, so that was before Adrian Smith even. And what was he playing? A Cherry Sunburst Les Paul.
Right. So you couldn't. There you go. Wait a minute. You couldn't hear the music?
No, I could not hear it.
No?
Nope.
Okay. Well, maybe they did. You people. If you could hear it, comment below. Okay, well, let's get out of here. This has been a long one. If this did work, we'll try to hone that out. There's got to be a way to. I just got to figure out how to get that done. If it does work, I'd like us to have like some Saturday night like watch parties.
Yes, that
We
would
can
be
sit here and
fun.
watch like an old Maiden. Well, I'll try to find anything that we can find that is bootleg. Any kind of bootleg stuff that we can't get control from until YouTube says don't do that anymore. I mean, what are we doing? We're just trying to have fun watching it
Being Generation
with our
F.
friends, right? Exactly. All right, everybody. That's all we got. Thanks again for all the subscribers out there, all your comments. Keep them coming in. We want to know, how do you feel about these things? How do you feel about life in the U.S.? What do you think about the whole Frederick the Great having something to do about your childhood?
Friedrich.
Sputnik, any of that stuff. Fender guitars. Friedrich. Any of the things at all that we talk about. Anything you would like us to talk about. Anything you don't want us to talk about anymore. We do have a thing coming out on expats that did go long, and so I'll be putting that out here probably over the weekend. So check that out, and we'll have some more stuff on the expat thing. So I want to make sure that we do provide some of that, because I am here, been here for 6 years. I'm not an expert, but I definitely know how to get around Colombia and more or less Latin America. Been more or less the same, I imagine, elsewhere. And I have lived in Mexico for 18 months. So Troy, what do you got going on this week? Anything exciting?
Nothing exciting at all.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's going to be a
You're
fun
not going to be
one.
late.
I enjoy doing nothing.
That's great. That's excellent. Never run out of that.
No.
All right,
It's
folks.
everything
That's all
I
we
thought
got.
it would be.
Until next time, Troy, thanks. And we'll see you. We'll be back next Friday with Freewheel Burning Fridays podcast. Between now and then, there'll be some other content. This stuff from today will be chopped up. Other than that, feel free to give any comments below. Check us out next time. Stay cool. Talk to you later, man.